Good afternoon, everybody, and warmly welcome to this press conference, and particularly welcome to my good colleague and friend Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz from Poland. We are greatly honored that you took the time to come here to Sweden at an important time, and also at a very busy time for you, since you're also holding the EU presidency. We had good and productive discussions today. Of course, we are also glad that you come with the defense industry delegation. So our defense industries are meeting. We think this is an interesting avenue for deepening our bilateral cooperation, also in light of the lessons learned from the war in Ukraine, that a strong defense industrial base is part of credible deterrence. So we think that's great collaborations so that we could be having on the defense industry side. We also had good and productive talks about the security situation in the Baltic Sea for obvious reasons, and not at least when it comes to Baltic Centauri, now the new mission that has started on the Baltic Sea, about also focusing on protection of critical infrastructure on the seabed. Let me just express also our deep gratitude for Poland and the leadership that you're providing and the inspiration that you are for all of us when it comes to defense investment. And I think we also had good and productive talks in regards also to the run-up to the NATO summit in Hague. Sweden and Ukraine, also Sweden and Poland has a unity of purpose in supporting Ukraine, and we are among the countries who have done the most for Ukraine, and of course that was an intrinsic part of our discussions today as well, in how we can further support our Ukrainian friends as well. So I think that was a few of the things that we discussed, and once again, Władysław, we're greatly honored that you're here. This is of course a product of the fact that also our prime ministers met in November and signed a broad strategic partnership agreement between Sweden and Poland, and I think security and defense is some of the core pillars in our bilateral relations. And during these last 10 years now, we're no longer partners, but we're true allies, and I think this is putting our relationship at a completely new level, on deeper and stronger than ever before. So thank you. Please, Władysław.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Paul, thank you very much for inviting us. It is yet another meeting of ours, but it is my first time when I am visiting Sweden in the current capacity. Even more, I want to thank you very much for our cooperation for the last year. Many meetings in Gdynia, in Brussels, our actions for security. I'm very glad that we are together, not only in the European Union, but also in NATO. It is due to your huge determination. It is the merit of your government and the whole community that stood very strongly and very clearly behind this. I'm very happy that we are allies. The role of the alliance is growing. Never before have Polish-Swedish relations been so good, but never have they been so important. It is the strongest historical relation between Poland and Sweden today. I want to thank you very much for that. It is the reason not only for pride, not only for satisfaction, but also, first of all, it is a great reason to develop our cooperation in all the possible dimensions. A special role today is devoted to defense industry. I have here with me representatives of both state-owned but also private defense industry businesses, and throughout the whole day they have been having meetings with the defense industry of Sweden. The investment in the defense industry is the basic task for our presidency. Well, we have a new commissioner for defense, and he must have a budget. He must have the possibilities to implement his ideas and his intentions. It can't be done without the money. Up to date, the European Union was spending about 1.5 billion euros to the investment in defense industry. It is definitely too little. It is just one contract for one European state. We need at least 100 billion euros in the future budget for the development of defense industry, investment in the defense industry. This is what we talked about. That was a very important part of our conversation, how to bring together, how to combine the actions undertaken by us, By the way, Poland is buying things from Sweden. I'm very happy with the declaration of the minister, who is saying very clearly that this must be a bilateral relationship, a two-way street. It must be solidarity, cooperation. Thank you very much for the openness for the development of economic cooperation. Thank you for the organization of the meeting of our industries, defense industries. The next thing is a responsibility for the Baltic Sea. Sweden, Poland, and Germany are three countries that have the command over the Baltic. On the rotational basis, Germany started, then we are going to take it over for 4 years as the lead nation, and then we are going to transfer it to Sweden. And this is an important initiative that was implemented, and there is a new command established, and Poland is a very important partner. Sweden is a very important partner in the process. What happened in late November, the agreement on strategic cooperation signed by our prime ministers. This is what we are now implementing. At that time, there was the declaration on the mission for the protection of the Baltic Sea. And this is the mission that is going to be done together by the Baltic states, but fortunately not only. There will be also numerous other applications, and we talked about that. We talked about the promotion of this solution, this mission, the Baltic mission, amongst other members of NATO. We want to talk about it during the upcoming meeting of defense ministers of the alliance in Brussels. So the Baltic mission is very important because we have trading routes, we have critical infrastructure there, we have supply chains, first of all, of energy, and all of that must be properly protected. Since the moment of the initiation of this mission in Helsinki a week ago by NATO Secretary General, NATO has been becoming an even more important but also more secure body of water. And this is an internal sea of NATO, and we have to do everything possible for NATO units to protect us and our allies. Here, the cooperation between Poland and Sweden is at the highest possible level. The cooperation and assistance for Ukraine. This is something that brought Poland and Sweden together in recent years. Donations, equipment, training, all of that was discussed by us during our meeting. We are ready to continue our assistance to Ukraine, and we will not be doing anything in connection with Ukraine without Ukraine. And all that political discussions that we are involved in take always into account the empowerment of Ukraine, its independence, its sovereignty. It's incredibly important to be well prepared for the most dire scenarios, and it can be done only if we properly coordinate all the actions. There's another thing which is very important for us, and I talked about it when I talked to the minister and the delegation. It is the protection of borders, and especially Polish-Belarusian border, which is being constantly and continuously attacked. It's a hotbed of conflict, and here we need the support. And I definitely invite you to cooperate, and this is addressed both to the border guard and also, well, encourage you to exchange experiences, share experiences about own borders, civil defense, as well as the preparation for the worst case scenarios. Almost all the subjects which we raised are also about defense spendings. Everything that we talked about is connected with increased defense spendings. Poland and Sweden constitute an example of countries which do not only meet the requirement of the threshold of 2% of defense spendings, but go above this amount, showing that they are solid allies, that they have their idea, their determination, and they know that without security, everything else is nothing. If security is not your priority, I wish to tell you that without security, other things simply do not exist. There will be no education, there will be no healthcare, there will be no development of our economy if we do not provide for security. Increased security expenditures is our duty, and I am very glad that Poland, Sweden, and the countries that are in the Baltic Sea region, the northern countries of the European Union, which we meet this requirement. We show how one must conduct themselves and also keep good transatlantic relations. It is also an important event today. Our meeting is important. Well, obviously, it is taking place as an element of the European or global politics, although we realize that somewhere across the ocean, in a moment, there will be another event happening, and many people are looking forward to, with some specific emotions and hopes. And I trust that the world, Poland, Sweden, and all of us will be able to face up to the task, not only by means of increasing our defense spendings, providing for the cooperation of our industries, cooperation, training, and being in the alliances together, but also by proper support for Ukraine to bring the world about just peace, the peace for the future generations. That has brought us together, long-term cooperation with Sweden, as well as a long-term future of our friendship. Paul, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for showing the best strategies and the best ideas.
All right. I think we stand ready to any questions you might have.
Dziękuję bardzo. Hello, Andreas Öbrink, Swedish Television. Question to you both, Herr Ministers. At this stage, Sweden will spend about 2.4% of its GDP on defense, and in Poland, almost twice that amount. What do you both think in the coming years? Will this be enough, or do we need to see increases? And also from the Polish side, perhaps, do you think that the Swedish spending is too low? Thank you.
If I could, Andreas, well, 2% is a floor, but it's not a ceiling. 2% is not nearly enough for Sweden. So what we have now is we're at 2.4 this year, we're going up to 2.6 by 2028. So in 5 years' time, we doubled our defense investments, and that means that we have a similar trajectory as Poland, but we're catching up from a lower level. Now we could expect, of course, from the Hague Summit, there's going to be a new defense investment pledge. And I think that's going to be informed about the new capability targets that the alliance is going to be setting, and then we will know the exact amount of the bill for the next defense investment pledge. But as my Prime Minister said in Sälen as well, we are ready that it could require more than 2.6% of GDP, and of course that was the message also from General Cavoli, who's secure as well. So. But it's a little bit early to set a specific number before we know how much the capability target is going to add up to. Last point just on that, sorry, we think it's also very important that all the EU efforts that are being done right now on European defense, which we strongly welcome, they should correlate to the capability targets that we have inside NATO as well. So we have a strong EU-NATO collaboration. Sorry, Władysław.
Po pierwsze, jeśli...
Well, first of all, if all the countries, all the NATO member states paid at least as much as Sweden does, we would be at a much safer place. I do appreciate Swedish effort, what the minister just said, that the pace of growth as well as the point of departure of Sweden is different in recent years. 2 weeks ago, I hosted members of parliament of Sweden from the party. My party has been cooperating for years, the Centre Party, and the whole parliamentary caucus of that party visited Poland, and I talked with them for 2 hours. And I expressed my recognition and appreciation for what the Swedish government is doing, what the Swedish parliament is doing, together with the Swedish citizens in increasing spendings. Well, certainly I would like it to be higher. The level of 4.7% of GDP in Poland is the level that we are going to achieve this year. And I believe that next year we will be exceeding 5% or attaining 5%. It is simply needed. Poland is at such a geographical location and with so many attacks against the Polish border taking into account the role Poland is playing to provide for the logistics support for Ukraine, as well as the transformation we have to go through, those spendings must go in billions. There is full social understanding in Poland for those expenditures. Over 80% of the population accepted, and they support the strategy of the government. I will certainly support any initiative that will create an opportunity to increase spendings in other countries of NATO and the European Union. But it is also needed to have a greater engagement of the whole European community, to create an opportunity to use the money, because in Poland we do not have defense industry in which we would be able to use the money that is really being spent at an increasing pace in different countries. If we do not have defense industry, if we do not have the shift of the economy where defense industry takes priority, where Europe protects its market, where there will be more protectionism for different European actions, where security will be the priority, then there will be nothing for us to talk about in the future. So, well, more spendings, fine. Well, Sweden is going in the right direction. Thank you for that. And this example of a fast and dynamic growth of expenditures is good. Not all the NATO member states are meeting at least that level. Well, if they do, we will be much more safer. Agnieszka Drążkiewicz from the Polish press agency, from the Polish radio. You talked about the new mission, the Baltic mission that was initiated just a few days ago. Did you agree on anything with each other? What we can allocate to this mission? What we can deploy? When can it start? We know that it is planned for a specific period of time. You were talking about Brussels, I believe, about Monday visit with other defense ministers. Are you going to go there together? Are you going to be involved in the talks together, or is it just a Polish initiative? Well, as far as Brussels is concerned, next week, it is in the European Union. It is during the Polish presidency, during the committee meeting in the European Parliament. I will be presenting the assumptions of the Polish presidency pertaining to security. The meetings where we agreed on that we will issue a request or appeal to NATO Secretary General and other allies. And I believe that with other countries from the Baltic region, when we will be appealing for the strengthening of the mission in the Baltic, as well as the deployment of their units. And we are going to address, for example, southern European countries that are not threatened as much, that they were not experiencing such incidents as the current incidents in the Baltic Sea. And this is our common European Baltic initiative, and this is going to take place in early February at the meeting of NATO defense ministers. Poland and Sweden declared their contribution, their ships, their reconnaissance, surveillance capabilities. Thank you very much for this cooperation and the capabilities that are similar that we are deploying to this mission. We need here the contribution of the countries that are in NATO, but they are not Baltic region countries, and we talked about involving them as well.
Simon Johnson from Reuters. This is a question to Sweden's defence minister, if I may. Two questions, actually. The first was when Sweden wanted to stop the Yiping in the Baltic, you were unable to get it to come into Swedish waters. You were unable to do any sort of investigation of that ship. If something similar happens in the future, how will Sweden respond this time? Will it respond in a more robust way? Is there anything you'll do differently? And how does Baltic Sentry change the ability of Sweden to react to such events? And the second question, if I may, straight away, was in the Washington Post, there was an article today that suggested that these cable severances that have happened are more likely the result of an accident than any deliberate act of sabotage. How do you respond to that? Is that the conclusion that Sweden has drawn? Or do you still see this as quite possibly the work of a foreign power?
Sure. I'll take the last question first. In regards to the article in Washington Post, this was nothing new or surprising for us as well. You always see these articles coming along. What we said that this could be an act of sabotage. We have not excluded that possibility, and due to the fact that we are exposed to increased hybrid threats, we are on our toes, but we haven't attributed these acts or possible acts to any country. So I think that there is now 2 ongoing inquiries going on, one in Finland, which is on possible sabotage, and there's an ongoing inquiry in Sweden, and let those have its process, and that process I expect to be finalized, and then we can see in regards to if there's a need to do any attribution. So I think we've been deliberately being open, but we are to it, that this could be an act of sabotage, but there are, as I said, 2 independent and the judiciary process to it. In regards to the Chinese vessels as well, what we have been saying is that, of course, if it's on our territorial water, where the legal ramifications for acting is much stronger than it's in this case it was on the Danish economic zone. There is an ongoing dialogue now among the NB8 countries, Nordic Baltic countries, in regarding what kind of interpretation we can do in regard to the law of the sea as well. I think it's important that we have the same interpretation among all the countries in the Baltic region as well, and that we use the opportunities that are available. In regard to Baltic Century, this is of course important in 2 ways. One is, of course, this is a strategic communications. It shows that NATO stands ready to deter and defend. The other one is, of course, that it enhances our ability to have sea surveillance and follow all vessels on the Baltic Sea. As you know, there's about 4,500 vessels operating at the same time. Therefore, an increased naval presence and maritime presence on the Baltic Sea is necessary, and it gives us a better situational awareness. Thank you.
Joanna Monkosa, Telewizja Polska.
Joanna Monkosa, Polish Public Television. I have a question about the Baltic operation, the Baltic mission. In connection that this mission has just been launched, do you plan to open a joint base for equipment, for example, the Navy equipment, not only for Poland and Sweden, but also some joint hub for equipment of the countries to participate in that mission? And my second question is connected with the acquisition of the Navy ships. Are we in Poland considering it, or, for example, are we considering to buy it from Sweden? Let me start with a question about ships, and in particular submarines. They will be important in Poland this year, in particular. And there is no doubt that it is one of the most important decisions we are facing. For over 30 years, Polish Navy men have been waiting for the new submarines. And I am incredibly grateful to our sailors that they were able to keep their capabilities to this extent for so many years. Many promised that, and I am determined that this government completes the process, that we are finally selecting the offer and the partner to cooperate with, to select the country with which we want to introduce this change in the Polish Navy. We want to buy submarines for the Polish Navy. Out of the 7 offers that have been submitted, there is also a Swedish proposal, and we are treating this very seriously. It is going to be a multi-phase process. It is going to be connected to the modernization, but it's also a very strategic decision to be made by Poland. We want to make this decision this year, and this year we want to sign the agreement. Submarines in 2025. They will constitute a huge challenge for us, but I believe that we will be face up to it. I will do everything possible to bring about a strategic agreement to take place. Now, as far as the Baltic mission is concerned, the mission whose, all of us are, authored that, because Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk at the end of November came to Stockholm with this proposal, and this is how it all started, to convince the whole alliance to start this mission. A week ago, it was implemented. Today, it is about allocation of assets and capabilities of individual navies. Poland and Sweden are implementing their allied obligation. We have a common headquarters over the Baltic Sea in Rostock, and then it is commanded by Germany, then Poland to be followed by Sweden. And this is the commander that coordinates this mission, and we want to increase this potential, this capability. We want to involve other member states of NATO, but we also want to increase the capacity connected with the coordination of actions with the use of Polish and Swedish capabilities and assets. What we are buying, and our industries are really cooperating very closely. So the vessels that we are building together with Sweden, it's about grenade launchers, Carl Gustaf grenade launchers, and it's the cooperation pertaining to surveillance. It's about aerial early warning SOB systems that are already in the Polish armed forces. We also talked about the latest versions of these aircraft. So there are so many areas. It's not only about ships, it's not about Navy, but it's also about reconnaissance and surveillance, a huge contribution from Sweden. Is it possible to create even greater assets and capabilities? Yes, we will be striving at allocating even greater assets and capabilities to this mission in the Baltic Sea and extend this operation.
If I just may, I think what Władysław is saying is very important, is of course that we appreciate the Polish markings being so accessible to Swedish companies, and that's a two-way street, and it's important for us to provide a level playing field, and that's why we're glad that we have a defense industry delegation from Poland here, that our companies can match up and that we can find good ways to transfer technology and find good ways to increase manufacturing as well. So that's very promising in regards also to our bilateral cooperation. And we also hope to upgrade our MOU dating back from 2015 as well, to in light of now the fact that we are allies and we have a joint interest into increasing in defense industrial manufacturing. All right.
It's here. Good afternoon, Mikołaj Małecki from Polish Press Agency. I got a question for both ministers. Recently, the Polish chef of the National Security Bureau, Mr. Jacek Siewiera, did a tournée around the Baltic, and after the tournée, he assessed that there is a need to reevaluate and maybe change some regulations considering the navigation law at the Baltic Sea, because, as he said, it's not enough now to make it possible for our navies and other services to look after and protect our critical infrastructure at the Baltic Sea. So do you agree with that opinion that our countries need to work together at the European Union and the NATO to adjust these regulations and maintain the freedom of navigation?
Yeah, I had the honor of meeting the National Security Advisor when he was in Stockholm just last week, and as I was alluded to, there is an ongoing dialogue now among all the Nordic Baltic states who are in this region about the interpretation of the law of the sea. This could have implications, for example, on everything from environmental legislations to also in regards to insurance matters, predominantly being taken place in Sweden inside the Foreign Ministry and not the Defense Ministry, of course, and sometimes also connected also to aspects related to the shadow fleets. As you know, Sweden is laser focused also on stepping up activities in regarding to making much more difficult for the shadow fleet to be operating in the Baltic Sea. So this is just along the same kind of thinking that I was trying to explain, that on the dialogue on the law of the sea that we're having right now.
Potrzebny jest
We need a special algorithm of actions. What is to be done in all the countries that have access to the Baltic Sea, all the NATO member states and the whole mission? Minister, well, Paul already answered the question asked by a representative of the Reuters when he said that it is necessary to have community-based regulations that will be binding for all the states that will participate in the Baltic protection. Poland also needs such shared regulations, and we are working on that. It was also the subject of the meeting of the recent Security Committee, and we worked on that, and I think that tomorrow at 8:30 there is going to be another meeting of the Security Committee, and it's going to be involved in the questions which are connected with the legislation as well as the way forward, the regulations, what to do, and this is going to be based on the current law. It must be a simple mode of conduct for all the countries participating in the Baltic Sea mission, some rules of engagement. It is not about some ambiguity of interpretation. It is too serious. If there is, for example, the cables are damaged, fiber optics damaged, critical infrastructure is at risk, we simply must have a very clear method of action, rules of engagement. We need that, and NATO and the European Union is to issue recommendations about it, and we will actively support that. Please use your microphone.
Well, you seem to be getting along in general terms, and you have interesting discussions, but could you be a bit more specific? Is there anything you agreed upon, like in an industrial field, or support for Ukraine, or maybe, or even anything about what's going on during to making both our nations more secure? I mean, cables or whatever we talk about.
Bardzo konkretnie podjęliśmy decyzję, że
Well, very specifically speaking, we made the decision that soon we are going to sign 3 agreements. The first one on our cooperation on security. The last agreement was signed by us in 2015. 10 years down the road, it's necessary to have a new version. Sweden joined NATO, and there are new circumstances in the Baltic Sea. This is number one. We want to prepare it within the coming months. The second thing is a joint list of different issues that are connected with the development of defense industry. And what the minister just said, the acquisitions to be performed by Sweden in Poland and by Poland in Sweden. It is very important for me today. We buy a lot, and we also want to reciprocate with our best products. The list of different subjects for us to work on. And this is why we are having the meeting of defense industry representatives today, to have a list of products as well as the possibilities for bilateral cooperation between the companies. And finally, the plan of action for period 2026-2027, the plan of action of our ministries, the plan of cooperation, and very precise timetable defined what we are to do. The subsequent outcomes is the development of the Baltic operation, as well as the deployment of our units to the Baltic operation, further will of cooperation for Ukraine. We support the continuation of the UDCG format, Ramstein format. After the change of the American administration, we will also encourage American ally to continue to have a position of a leader. The third very important thing is Swedish expectations from the Polish presidency in the European Union. I received them today, and we are going to do that. This is the agenda for the new Commissioner for Defense. It's also about financial capacity, but also what we want to do during the Polish presidency. And finally, coordination of actions for the development of defense industry in Europe. A boost of energy, some strength for Europe to become self-sustaining in security, because it is not really today, because the capabilities for production of Russia and its allies, for example, from Iran, are much, much greater than Europe or even NATO member states. So it's a great challenge for us.
And also that we discussed in depth was also about the concept of Navy policing. And of course we have air policing, and your Prime Minister suggested you would have Navy policing as well. I expect you maybe to draft some paper or come with a proposal for the NATO Defense Ministerial in February. We are very interested in if we could support that, so we are interested in getting into more details. We think that initiative is commendable. Our Navy is, of course, very much Baltic focused. We've been operating for hundreds of years below the surface, on the surface, and in the air. So there was some of the discussions we had also about the situation awareness on the Baltic Sea. Another aspect that we also talked about was training of Ukrainian soldiers as well, and we greatly appreciate that Poland taking a great responsibility in training lots of Polish soldiers in Poland as well, and we're interested in continuing that dialogue that's related to EU MUM Ukraine, which we hope to be extended and to continue doing, and whatever we can do on a bilateral basis there would be of great interest to Sweden and many other countries as well. All right.
This press event. Thank you.
Dziękujemy bardzo.
All right. Thank you.